Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Free Abundance. So for today's topic, I'm going to be doing a follow-up for a video that I posted a couple of years ago in the topic of understanding the dynamics of men and the boy child and the fallacies that our society has based their consensus upon when it comes to the abuses of boys and girls and how underspoken the topic is of abuses towards the boy child. So I'm going to be using two different resources here. I'm going to be reviewing a website that I have linked to one of my videos that I did over this topic, and it's going to be the 1 in 6 platform. Let me make my screen a little bit darker. The 1 in 6 platform. So I'm going to be sharing some information from there. And then I'm also going to be going back through my Fire in the Belly book by Sam Keen on being a man and kind of drawing some contrast from the book and understanding society's fallacies, the underdevelopment of the woman's matriarch, why our society is so um, in a disillusionment when it comes to the role that women are supposed to play in our society as mothers, as women, as supporters, nurturers, so on and so forth. And kind of just asserting my position when it comes to certain topics that are very cruel against the boy child specifically. So I'm going to get into the 1 in 6 platform because it is a really, really good platform to understand the abuses of men and boys and how really you go astray not knowing what their experiences are. I know it is um very much a hot topic for men and their inability to really express themselves in a way that they can be understood is very difficult. So I think that being able to understand the facts, the myths, things that are not widely taught in our society can be helpful for any of our brothers who are dealing with traumas in their lives, trying to figure out which way to go, how to deal with women, how to heal from the mother wounds, the father wounds, lots of different things, and how to be a woman and a sister who can help to bridge the gap to that missing piece of the puzzle. So first I'm going to go through the website and I'm going to kind of read some of these topics here because it's an unspoken topic when it comes to what is a fact when it comes to male abuse and what is a myth when it comes to male abuse. So you're going to see here on the website, this is going to talk about myths and facts. So I'm just going to go through it. I'm going to read some of these and try to give my opinion on it and my take on it and my understanding for it. So, myth number 1, which is pretty disgusting and foul, I think, for anyone to kind of hold this in their mind when it comes to boys. But this first myth states here boys can't be sexually abused. And the fact here is stated: boys and men can be sexually used or abused, and it has nothing to do with how masculine they are. So it says here, everyone absorbs the myth that males aren't victims to some extent. It's central to masculine gender socialization, and boys pick up on it very early in life. This myth implies that a boy or man who has been sexually abused or abused will never be a real man. Our society expects males to be able to protect themselves. Successful men are depicted as never being vulnerable, either physically or emotionally. Whether you agree with that definition of masculinity or not, boys are not men. They are children. They are weaker and more vulnerable than those who sexually abuse or exploit them, who use their greater size, strength, and knowledge to manipulate or coerce boys into unwanted sexual experiences and staying silent. This is usually done from a position of authority, i.e., a coach, teacher, religious leaders, status, older cousins, athletes, social leaders, using whatever means are available to reduce resistance, such as attention, special privileges, money, or other gifts, promises or bribes, even outright threats. What happens to any of us as children does not need to define us as adults or men. It is important to remember that 1 in 6 boys are sexually abused before the age of 18, and that those boys can grow up to be strong, powerful, courageous, and healthy men. Examples are found in our male survivor stories section, and there are many others out there. So I like how this website goes in and gives you some, societal facts and then mythological facts that people assume to be valid when it comes to this topic. So there are a lot of men who have shared their stories on here, express how they got through those experiences and how they became a better man and they became more exemplary in society. And I think it is very good to hear another side of the story when it comes to the fallacy of the socialization labels that men are being held under. So I'm going to go through this book because this book definitely kind of gauges more into this topic. And specifically, I'm going to go to a really good chapter here to understand these different historical facts when it comes to manhood. So I'm going to go to chapter 8. It talks about man as a hunter, man as a planter, man as warrior, um, and then it talks about Homo sapiens, Dionysians, prophetic men, and man as the image of God. So there's a lot of really good stuff in this chapter here, chapter 8, that I'm going to go through to really gauge this societal mindset structure and try to bring into these fallacies and help our brothers get to a healing stage where they can grow through these tumultuous experiences. I'm going to go to chapter 8, and this is a brief history of manhood. So I'm going to read this part here about man as the image of God. So it states here, throw out the pious Sunday school pictures of Jesus, the torturous theology of the church, and one bright image and clear gospel remains. Man is spirit incarnate. At once a citizen of two kingdoms, the here and now and the there and then. As an archetype of man, Jesus exemplifies the notion that virtue and divine inspiration can never be separated because man is created in the image and of the substance of God. The problem of manhood and the consequent tragedy of history, from the Judeo Christian perspective, is that men misidentify themselves. They act out the drama of their lives before the audience of their contemporaries rather than before the all knowing and merciful eye of God. They get mired in the limited perspective of their immediate desires rather than seek harmony with the will of God. The image of Jesus on the cross is central to the Christian notion of manhood because it dramatizes the issue of will, a recurring theme in any discussion of manhood. These days, popular professional cheerleaders sell seminars that teach how to develop willpower. A century ago, Nietzsche was preaching the Zarathustrian gospel of the will of power. Before that, Socrates assured us that will automatically followed vision, and that to know the good was to do it. The genius of Christianity is that it interconnects the heart, the will, and the divine spirit, and links virtue to surrender. The lesson of Death Theme is that a man is most virile not when he insists upon his autonomous will, but when he harmonizes his will with the will of God. So I think it's very interesting to understand here when we're talking about man as a structure and as a basis for understanding history and how man was created, making sure that as a human, from a humanistic standpoint, you have to keep yourself in a position of duality and understanding that our experiences are not um, separate. When it comes to girls and boys dealing with abuses, we can't say girls, abuses that they deal with are more valid and more important than a boy's experiences, because we were all created by the same creator, by the same by the same clay, by the same clot, whatever religion that you can look at, the evolution of man in, we were all created from the same cells. So I think that in order to fix our societal outlook on the boy child and man's experiences is to go back within yourself and understand that when you gave birth to that boy child, you gave birth to that girl child. They were both born in the same formation. So I think that, you know, going astray too far from that understanding is where our society definitely falters and needs to be reawakened and more um, connected with, especially as the matriarch and as a woman who holds and carries both of these children and brings them into the world. So I think it's really interesting, looking from, a biblical standpoint and understanding that, these like prophets and you know individuals that come from biblical texts were men, and these were the experiences of men that were being spoken to us through the word of God. And understanding that is very important to not overshadowing man's experience. So there's another part within this 1 in 6 platform that I'm going to go through, which is in the topic of society's genderalization of boys and how they get mislabeled under these terms based on the weight of their abuses. So, myth number 4 here talks about only gay men sexually abuse. So, that is a myth that is being spoken here. And then we're going to talk about what the fact is here. So, the fact is that boys can be sexually abused by both straight and gay men and women. Sexual abuse is the result of abusive behavior that takes advantage of a child's vulnerability and is in no way related to the sexual orientation of the abusive person. So, studies about this question suggest that men who have been sexually abused or who have sexually abused a boy most often identify as heterosexual and often are involved in adult heterosexual relationships at the time of abusive interaction. There is no indication that a gay man is more likely to engage in sexually abusive behavior than a straight man, and some studies even suggest it is less likely. But sexual abuse is not a sexual relationship, it's an assault. The sexual orientation of the abusive person is not really relevant to the abusive interaction. A man who sexually abuses or exploits boys is not engaging in a homosexual interaction, any more than men who sexually abuse or exploit girls are engaging in heterosexual behavior. He is a deeply confused individual who, for various reasons, desires to sexually use or abuse a child and has acted on that desire. So I think that this is a really good look into how our society will mislabel boys who have been abused as gay or as homosexual when child abuse has nothing to do with a sexual relationship. So I think it is very important for girls to understand that if you have experienced, a brother or someone that that you love and care about who has experienced any type of abuses in their lives, it's not fair to automatically throw this mislabel on them and say, "Oh, well, this person is gay." You know, because I feel like that is a large assertion that says that they were in acceptance to the abuse, that they liked the abuse, that they began to romanticize the ideology of abuse. And that is definitely something that really dilutes the violence and the experiences that boy children experience, whether it be from men or women. Like it states there, it is not an orientation of the person that we should be focusing on. It is the abuse of a child and exploitation that needs to be more focused on, and figuring out how we can keep children safe from these individuals in our society. So I'm going to go through another part of this Fire in the Belly book, because this definitely talks a lot about sexual violence when it comes to men. So I'm going to go to this section here. And I talked about this in my book review before about the war system, cannon fodder, a lot of those different kind of understandings when it comes to the experiences of men. So I'm going to go back to that same chapter, chapter 4, and this one is the right of war and the warrior psyche. So I'm going to go back to that chapter because there's a lot of information when it comes to violence that needs to be dismantled in our society. So I'm going to go and I'm going to read this. It's kind of like a chart here that gauges some of the different experiences in that war system based on how men deal with it. And then it has this section here on how women deal with that war system. So the warrior that we're going to speak about here, this one talks about the ego ideal. So it basically is stating that the ego ideal is the shadow self. And then consciously, and then it'll explain unconsciously. So shadow is unconscious, ego ideal is conscious. So the ego idea that is conscious for this warrior mentality is he is expected to protect, to suffer, to kill, and to die. His body and character are hardened to allow him to fight. And then the unconscious shadow is he is fragile and terrified of his tenderness and mortality. So I think it's very interesting understanding the ego ideal and then the shadow side ideals. So it says here, from an ego standpoint, the warrior is dominant, he's cruel, he's sadistic. But then the shadow self says he's covertly submissive and passive. So it's very interesting when we go to the female side and we talk about she is expected to inspire, to nurture, to heal. Her body and character are softened to allow her to care. But then the shadow side of a woman is she is tough and terrified of her power. So I think it's very interesting to, look at these contrasts and see where we are more like-minded than different, and to understand we all deal with these different warrior sets of systems, and in order to assure our common ground, we need to make sure that we attend to our commonalities more than our differences. And that is the only way that we can protect one another from the violence that is being perpetuated into our communities, into our society, and how we can make the world a better place for our sons and daughters. So I think that's a really good contrast when it comes to, kind of myth busting here, understanding the myths and the facts. So I'm going to read one more. And this one kind of walks into number 4, the fourth myth about, gender orientation and abusers. So myth number 5 is a huge one here. Being a male survivor means you're gay. So the fact here is whether he is gay, straight, or wherever you identify, a boy's sexual orientation is neither the cause nor the result of sexual abuse. By focusing on the abusive nature of sexual abuse rather than the sexual aspects of the interaction, it becomes easier to understand that sexual abuse has nothing to do with the boy's sexual orientation. So I'm going to go ahead and read through that one because I feel like, this is a really heavy topic when it comes to understanding the feminization of men in our society. There's a lot of talk about how docile men have become, how weakened their experiences have become, and how much more of a female standpoint they have kind of submitted themselves to, which I feel like is definitely a result of the psychological abuse that comes from, whether it is a female abuser or a male abuser, how that can create a man to be docile and not speak up for himself at all and take on these personas that he feel, his trauma created him to be, which is not a fact or anything that you should stand upon as your foundation of why you are who you are, or, understanding your traumas. So it states here, there are different theories about how sexual orientation develops, but experts in human sexuality do not believe that sexual abuse or premature sexual experiences play a significant role. There is no good evidence that someone can make another person be homosexual or heterosexual. Sexual orientation is a complex issue, and there is no single answer or theory that explains why someone identifies himself as any of these said topics. It is common, however, for boys and men who have been abused to express confusion about their identities and orientations, whether they identify as, wherever they identify. Some guys who identify as straight fear that due to their experiences as boys, they must be really actually, under this label of gay. They may believe this would mean that they can't be a real man, as defined by the larger society. Even men who clearly identify as heterosexual men who project very traditional male traits may fear that others will find them to be, under that label. So I think it's very interesting understanding the complex duality when it comes to a boy child being abused, and how you can automatically assert that there must be some, you know, orientation confusion when abuse is abuse. It is not what you have romanticized over. So I think the romanticization of abuse is something in our society that needs to be completely dismantled, because that definitely draws a wedge between girls and boys reaching out to one another for help if they are truly in need of help. They start to romanticize about, their abusers. They are said to be, under this gender orientation when they actually are seeking to have someone help them. And I think that is a big thing with our society today, seeing the experiences of men and understanding that there is more of an underlying societal issue here that needs to be dealt with head on. So this is a really good website. I'm going to go through here. There are a lot of different support groups that they have here. I'm always sharing this for any male who is looking for help when it comes to any of these topics that you know are dealing with as a man. There are a lot of men who have been able to speak these experiences and speak their truths and get through that type of ordeal. So they do have support group chats. They have weekly online support groups for men. They do have a lot of different hotlines that can be reached. This one specifically is called RAIN National Hotline for anyone who is, experiencing violence. This is the RAIN website. So there's lots of really good things here. And as I stated in my last video, I am someone who is very much in support of this platform. If there is anyone who wants to find, an organization to, um, donate to, I feel like this is definitely a huge one. They do have their Zero Abuse Project, and you can make a donation here in any amount, and it definitely can help to bridge the gap between abuses against girls and boys. I've also shared the Bristlecone Pine Project. So this is a really good one. It talks about how you can heal, how you can attain support. Poetry being a tool for, deep spiritual connections, recognizing your inner strength and intelligences. There are a lot of men on here who have shared a lot of their experiences, which I find to be very honorable. No matter how old you are, there are men from all age groups who have been able to be transparent and open about those experiences and trying to help other men and boys get through all of those things. So, for anyone who would benefit from understanding this organization, I would definitely say share it all over social media because it's definitely something that is much needed in our society today. So I'm going to share one more part of this book here before the end of this video. And this one is going to be about the heroic virtues. And we're going to go to the virtue of moral outrage. And I'm just going to read through that. So this one here is the virtue of moral outrage on this side here. So this one talks about, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to read the last sentence here because I've been through a lot of this book for the last couple of years, and there's a lot of things that have stuck out here for me. So it says here, by identifying the false heroism of political claims of absolute righteousness, any crime is justified so long as it is for the fatherland, the motherland, the revolution, democracy, the people of God. Becker raised the question of authentic heroism. The most exalted type of heroism involves feelings that one has lived to some purpose that transcends one. Both his writing and his life force us to ask how we can achieve a sense that we are used for divine purposes without falling into dangerous forms of self-righteousness. So it's going to state here, in my pantheon of heroes, the best of men are like Ernest Becker, spiritual warriors who are alive with moral outrage and who enter the arena to wrestle with the mystery of evil in one of its many disguises. Fierce men, rich in considered judgment, who still have thunder and lightning in them, not dispassionate spectators or cynics. Any day of the week, give me the hot Bill Moyers, who takes risks, calls presidents liars, and gives vent to prophetic anger at secret wars and hidden government, rather than the cool McNeil Lehrer, who nicely report the news and lead discussions on every perspective that is fashionable within the Beltway. So I think it's really good to understand in order for our society to grow, we have to meet these issues head on. We cannot make them fashionable. We cannot make them sound like they are, features and acquirements. They need to be completely dismantled, dislodged from our society in order for our children to be safe. And I think that understanding that as a woman is where you grow within your matriarch. How can you be someone that is required to be the nurturer, the woman, the one who leads the family when you are faltering in the area of understanding the experiences of boys and the boy child and not really understanding or gauging your intellect to um, meet them where they are and try to be someone who is, you know, I'm always using this statement, be the well where they can be led to drink from. You can't force anyone to drink, but if you lead them to it, it can quench their thirst, it can quench their psyche, and they can understand, okay, I'm not at war with every woman in the world. I'm not at war with every man in the world. I have a safe haven, a safe keep where I can go to and be understood in order for our society to be in holism. And anyone who knows me, I'm always talking about holism from a spiritual standpoint, everything being in harmony, everything being in rhythm. In order for our society to be in rhythm, man's experiences and woman's experiences need to be in harmony instead of being head on with one another and one upping one another. One experience is more important, this one is less important. I feel like those are the ways that our society definitely gets broken down, and it definitely fuels the anger and hatred, whether it be from a political standpoint, whether it be from a societal standpoint, the gender kind of disparity standpoint. there needs to be more solidarity when it comes to men and women standing together, especially for the youth, and giving them a platform to stand on so that they can truly understand who they are outside of these trauma bonds and these trauma links that they get themselves attached to. So for anyone who enjoyed this video, please give it 2 thumbs up. Please check out the 1 in 6 platform. And if you can find a copy of the Fire in the Belly book, it would definitely be a really good read for anyone who is into reading and understanding emotional intelligence. And you don't have to be a man to read this book. This book is definitely suggested for women to read because there are a lot of psychological systems in here that our society does not teach girls to understand, and in order to check their behaviors and to assure that they are in oneness with both of God's creations. So, thank you for watching today. I really do appreciate all of my viewers, new subscribers. Comment and subscribe to my channel for more DIYs, recipes, and reviews. Thank you so much for watching.